is Notsam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Well, it's for the first time in a long time, but I feel like now is as fitting a time as there ever has been. Welcome back to Notsam Wrestling. MVP Montel Vontavious Porter, who I feel like has probably had one of the best weeks of any of us. MVP, what's the haps, man?
Dude, what is that? What was that show? Best week ever, or something like that?
yeah, man. I was very excited in Houston. I was there to do the kickoff show, and I walk into catering, and I see that familiar face of yours, and I didn't ask why you were there. I didn't want any spoilers. I didn't know if you were there just, to kind of support some old friends. I didn't know if you were there for a surprise appearance. I did not know. I hoped, but I did not know until that music started playing like everybody else in the stadium that you were coming out as Kill Monger himself. How?
I'm glad you got that right. The number of people that said, "Oh, MVP with the Black Panther gear." No, it's Killmonger. I had the Killmonger gear on.
I can't remember who it was. Somebody in the locker room, though. The first person said, "Oh, is that gear looks like Black Panther," and then somebody else went, "No, that's Killmonger, and it's even cooler."
Outstanding.
So,
but yeah,
how did you find out? Like, first of all, like, what was that process? Like, when and how did you find out that the WWE was interested in having you participate in the 2020 Royal Rumble?
Well, in the past they had reached out,
Mhm.
and I just was. That's not what my mindset was at the time. But this time I reached out because it was interesting, and my son is 5 now, and he's a massive wrestling fan. Like, just over the last year, he's become this huge wrestling fan. And now he knows the names, and Rey Mysterio is one of his favorites. His mom sent me a video of him turning the clothes basket upside down and jumping on it onto a pillow doing the West Coast pop. And he goes, "What are you doing, Camden?" And he turns around and he goes, "I'm Rey Mysterio."
That's adorable.
You should know, So I thought about it, and I reached out to one of my friends that's a little higher up and expressed my interest, and they got back to me promptly and said, "Yeah, let's do it if you'd like to, and we'll make sure that we get tickets, some good seats for your son." And I gotta say, man, they were so incredibly accommodating. It was awesome. And then Paul Heyman, who's in charge of Raw, I had a chance to talk to him, and he and I have maintained a friendship from my days in developmental. No matter where we worked, we've always stayed in touch and talked and kept abreast of what one another was doing. And he's in charge of Raw, and when he understood my son loving Rey Mysterio, he was kind enough to go ahead and give me a 2-segment match with Rey on Raw, and that means more to me than I can ever express, because I had an awesome week, but it was primarily because my son got to go to the Rumble, see all the stars. He got to go in the back after and meet Rey. Rey brought him a mask. It was just overwhelming for him. And then the next night, he got to watch me on Monday Night Raw wrestle Rey Mysterio, and his mom recorded that. Dude, just to be there, to see him imitating my entire entrance in front of the TV as I'm doing it. That's the kind of shit that fathers dream of.
Yeah.
And I've given him a memory that will outlast me, because I remember my mother taking me to the Miami Beach Convention Center when I was in first grade, kindergarten, about the age my son is now, give or take, and just being blown away by that spectacle and experience and these behemoths. And that wasn't even, the Miami Beach Convention Center, Florida Championship Wrestling. That wasn't, the amazing light show that WWE is. It's the sights, the sound. When you're 5 years old, it's an experience that changes your life. So I am so thrilled that I was able to give that to my little boy, and that's what that whole weekend was about for me, giving my son a chance to see me in the WWE and to close out that chapter.
So when did you have that conversation with Paul Heyman about doing the match with Rey Mysterio? Was that something that he came to you on Sunday and said, "Hey, man, while you're here, why don't you head on down to San Antonio with us and do the match? Or was that something that was well in advance talked about?
No, I was asked to come to San Antonio as well.
Gotcha.
But what I was going to do, I had no idea. I was, yeah, sure, all right, it's right down the street from me, no big deal. I could do that.
Yeah.
And the Heyman came to me with that on Monday. So
That's amazing. And it's also got to be nice for you, too, that not only do you get that 2-segment match with Rey Mysterio, but they air an entire video package before you come out as to who MVP is, educating anybody from this generation that doesn't remember your run. Because, it's been, you forget. Somebody like me forgets that it's been 9 years. Yeah, a decade, which is, it's crazy to me. But they air that whole package. They talk about who you are on commentary and everything. And I feel like you coming back to have that just one more match, and you said on your Instagram that was your last WWE match. What it really did was it put a bow on the career and cemented the legacy of who you were in WWE.
I agree. And there were people that were saying things like, oh man, is that how you're gonna go out? Was that it? Is that, why didn't you do this? Or how come you didn't do that? I'm like, yo, I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do anything for me. And like I said, this wasn't for me. This was for my little boy. So the fact that they were willing to be so accommodating and allowing me to do something so incredibly special for my son.
Yeah.
That means more to me than anything. And that's all it was about for me. That's it. And like you said, I had a great time at WWE, man. I literally got to travel the world. I became an international wrestling superstar. And, when society wouldn't give me a chance to earn minimum wage, the WWE, Vince McMahon specifically, said, we're going to give you a chance to become a star and to make money and to change your life. And in so doing, gave me the ability to change other people's lives. So for the WWE to come back, and when I wanted to leave to go to Japan, give me a hard time. I had over a year left on my contract. They didn't have to let me go, but Vince was gracious enough to say, okay, come back when you're ready. And I didn't come back.
Yeah. And 10 years later, you call and you go, all right, guys, I'm ready.
Yeah. Can I come back now? And, like, screw you, dude. Like, what? No, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So I just appreciate that they were nice enough to grant that to me. And then, to top it off, there's a possibility that I could be joining them behind the scenes. So, we'll see how that goes. But I'm at a great point, man. I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to end it. I'm ready to call it a career.
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying for some time, everybody that knows me for the last year, I've been saying I've got maybe 2 years left.
Huh.
I want to walk away. I don't want to limp away.
Right.
And I'm starting to limp. So I've been fortunate because of my WWE career. That allowed me to go to New Japan before it was cool, before all the other kids were doing it.
Yeah.
I was one of the first ones to say, hey, look, there's the most amazing wrestling you'll see is going on in Japan. You guys come check this out.
Man, I remember speaking of New Japan, I remember seeing you and Finn Balor, Prince Devitt at the time, in Rahway, New Jersey at the Rec Center when Jersey All Pro brought New Japan over. Before New Japan was the phenomenon that it is now, seeing you guys in Rahway, New Jersey representing New Japan, that was probably, 2012, 2013, a couple years after you were removed from WWE?
2012, because I asked for my release in December 2010. And I remember I got the call like the week before Christmas where they granted my release in 2010. So it was February 2011 that I debuted for New Japan at Sendai. So that was in 2011. The New Japan Invasion, where they did the Northeast loop.
Yeah. So
All the way to Philly. Yeah.
So I will say this, going back to the Raw and the Royal Rumble matches, I was very happy the Raw match happened because, and I'll tell you, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I wasn't the only one who was disappointed that when you came out and Brock Lesnar was in the ring, we were like, oh, all we want to do is see him balling. Like, all we want to do is in 2020 look at him do the balling thing and just, just to live that nostalgia. And then when you came out on Raw for a match, I was like, yes, we're going to get to see it. And when we saw it and like the crowd was with you on it, I was so happy for me, for you, and now for your son that we got to see that in 2020. So do you come back, right? And you were back for the 25th anniversary of Raw for that little, segment, but obviously you haven't really been around watching how matches are now put together and getting a feel for the environment backstage now in WWE. Is it very different than it was in 2010?
So I see now that, the evolution of professional wrestling has come on to where the comic book, video game, cosplay fandom has merged with pro wrestling fandom. And we have a generation now where they didn't grow up on pro wrestling when pro wrestling was real. They've never known pro wrestling to be real. Pro wrestling was MMA before there was MMA. So now you've got all of these youngsters, this next generation who they grew up on the Matrix. Like fight choreography to them from the Matrix, that changed everything. Prior to that, it was, block, punch, kick. And you had martial arts movies, but martial arts weren't in the mainstream of fight choreography. Now, if you watch, the Fast and the Furious, if you watch The Transporter, John Wick, Jason Bourne, Captain America, everybody fights with this Wing Chun, this hybrid style of fighting. And I think that what we have now is a direct correlation to that. The intergender wrestling. Well, if you played Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, man, you could Chun-Li whoops ass. Chun-Li's a badass character, So I think the consumer is different because the consumer grew up watching things that were different, understanding things different. To this generation, pro wrestling has always been scripted entertainment. It's characters, playing roles, being superheroes. So I think that's where the evolution is, where you're having a completely different style and mentality towards what pro wrestling is. And if the consumers are buying that, then you can't be an old timer, be a dinosaur and say, you're killing the business. No, you don't understand what these consumers want. There's a reason that these people are, booked every weekend and that, the Young Bucks have the longest merch line. There's a reason that people are paying $30 to take a picture holding Joey Ryan's dick. I love Joey Ryan. I'm a fan of Joey Ryan. He found his groove. I would never do that with him.
Right.
But, like I had an incident with a promoter who told me, hey, I can get Joey Ryan on the show. Mm-hmm. I said, great. I want to book you to work him. I said, no, that's a contrast in styles. It's all about matchups. That's not going to work. He goes, well, then, I'm not going to book Joey Ryan. No, don't put that on me.
Right.
You got so many other guys on the card that he'll have a great match with. The fans will love it. He's an addition to your card. That's, you got a buffet, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Joey Ryan brings something very unique. And the promoter said, yeah, you know what, you're right. He put him with somebody else. They had a great, entertaining match. The crowd loved it. And it was awesome. If people are going to pay to see that, then how are you going to say Joey Ryan's doing it wrong? He's killing the business. Yeah, okay, well.
And there is this ability that fans have to watch something, be equally entertained. You can be at a show and see something like a Joey Ryan penis spot and love it and be like, this is why I love wrestling. And then watch an MVP match where you take things much more, I don't want to say seriously as if Joey Ryan doesn't take his stuff seriously, but present it in a way that's a little bit less fantasy based, we'll say. And they can still be into that just as much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And and like I said, I'm not a fan of that, but I recognize it for what it is. And I argue with the old school guys and say, no, man, he's killing the business. And you can't do that. Yeah, well, they said, the same thing about an Irish whip once upon a time.
Yeah. I love that theory because you do. I mean, you go to see John Wick, and like if you leave the theater after seeing a John Wick movie and somebody's going like, that fight would never happen that way in real life. You're like, I don't want to hang out with that guy anymore. That movie was awesome. I just had a blast. I don't care if that's the way that fight would go down or not in real life. I was entertained by it. I'm going to go see the next John Wick movie.
There you go. It's as simple as that. And
Yeah.
I don't get in. I just don't understand. In the fandom, where the fans are split between this brand and that brand. It's wrestling. Watch it. You like Burger King. You like McDonald's. Do you wish that Burger King goes out of business? I never understood that. I don't like orange soda. I don't wish for Sunkist or Crush to go out of business. I just don't drink orange soda. It's real simple.
Right. You
I
don't get upset when other people do. You just don't.
Oh my God, you like Sunkist? Oh, that's the worst soda in the world. You divert your energy elsewhere.
Yeah. No, I think that's 100% true. I mean, let's talk about the Marvel movies. You come out as Killmonger, and a movie like Black Panther, nothing in that movie is based on anything that could ever happen in reality. It is ridiculous. However, it's nominated for an Oscar. You know what I mean? There is room for these other forms of entertainment, and I love the way you put it. I never thought about that because I have thought about the last generation. I think that the biggest divide in the last generation that came in is, the guys that are like late 30s getting into 40s now. When they came in, they were the first generation that came in growing up as wrestling fans. So it was the first time that you had a locker room with people in it that grew up buying wrestling toys and going to see Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. And there was that sort of shift and change where we can acknowledge that we grew up as quote unquote marks and now we're wrestlers. We're going a step forward. We've now got another generation that you're right. Nobody in the last 20 years or more has sat there and gone, this professional wrestling is as it seems. Everything is legitimate here. Everybody knows that it's a form of entertainment, and this generation grew up on fighting looking a certain way, but then entertainment-based fighting looking a different way, and one doesn't take away from the other, does it?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It just comes down to preference. To me, in the world of professional wrestling, there's room for everything. There's room for AEW. There's room for WWE. There's room for NWA Power. Everybody offers you a slightly different variation of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You got Burger King, you got McDonald's, you got Whataburger, you got In-N-Out, you got Five Guys. They're all burgers.
Right.
They're just presenting them to you a different way. And you know what? They're all pretty good burgers. So why not, if you like burgers, take a stop over here and have some of this. Do you like burgers or do you like McDonald's? What do you like?
Yeah. No, totally. When you said your kid had just started getting into wrestling. Was he watching your stuff? Was he aware of your stuff, or did he just kind of naturally stumble upon wrestling and then you said, hey, wait a minute, why don't you take a look at some of these matches?
I suspect his uncles probably had a little something to do with him seeing some of Daddy's stuff.
Yeah.
But it was funny because he would walk in my closet sometimes and he'd see, like, I remember specifically the ring coat that I wore in New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And he would point to it and go, oh, that's Daddy Fight. So, he understood, pro wrestling. He would grab my boots and he'd put them on and go, oh, this is Daddy Fight. This is Daddy Fight. So he kind of understood that Daddy did something that was kind of like fighting. So the first time he saw me wrestle was I did something for Booker T
Mm-hmm.
in Texas for his promotion, Reality of Wrestling. And that was the first time that he actually saw Daddy fight.
Right.
And the story attached to that is he was, man, maybe about 3-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And he had all the Avengers. And he also had Daddy. And Daddy was the ultimate jobber. Like, I could, but after he saw Daddy fight, all of a sudden, man, Daddy was beating Thor, Iron Man, Spider-Man. Like, Daddy started moving his way up the card. The one person I couldn't beat was the Hulk. Couldn't go over on the Hulk.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
when
the size differential, yeah.
the Hulk, Hulk is strongest there is.
Yeah.
But after that, I think, I had a better understanding of what Daddy did. And then it was cool when Ring of Honor came,
Mm-hmm.
and I was King's surprise mystery tag team partner. I made arrangements for his uncle to bring him with his two cousins. They're virtually brothers. So he got to be there for that. And man, the ovation that the Ring of Honor crowd in Houston gave me when, the MVP chant, it was humbling, absolutely humbling. And that my son was there for that. And he had a great time, and he got to come in the back, and he got to beat everybody. And he told me that Colt Cabana was better than me, even though we beat Colt Cabana that night. Like, hey man, how does that work? We won, but how is Colt more over with my son than me? So that was cool. But it was off of that I thought, man, for him to have that experience at that Ring of Honor show, I would love to let him experience, Daddy on a WWE show. And fortunately, it all came together for the Royal Rumble and for him to be there to have that. So,
you talk about all the different varieties of wrestling that are available for fans now. What time besides right now would you ever imagine that technically the Royal Rumble was 2020, but in that same sort of 365-day period, you wrestled in Impact, Ring of Honor, and WWE. That's amazing.
I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah.
Dude, I hadn't even considered that. That's actually pretty wow. No, you're on the money there. I hadn't even thought of that. That's pretty crazy. Well, I guess that's where it comes down to me being the Ronin of pro wrestling, right? I serve no master. I just wander the wasteland looking for battle.
Hey, do you have any idea where the inflatable MVP entrance is? I'm gonna tell you, I was kind of hoping that for the Raw match they would break out the inflatable MVP entrance and you could come in like you were, coming onto the football field.
That would have been pretty cool, but they didn't. And I have no idea where it is, man. I'm sure it's in a warehouse in Connecticut somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably that's probably deflated in a crate somewhere, and at some point, maybe when MVP finally goes into the WWE Hall of Fame, which I feel like because of what we saw at the Royal Rumble, seems like it's more and more likely than it ever has been before. Maybe that's when we break out the inflatable entrance one more time.
Well, I was going to say this. Shout out to the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, who, when I was being groomed for my debut on SmackDown, Dream would come down to Deep South and he would come and work with me privately. Just, after the school was closed, we'd come in and we'd work together. And one afternoon, I was actually working out with Benoit and Dream. And we were talking about the Miami Hurricanes and how I'm a big Hurricanes fan and how the Hurricanes would come out of the tunnel with the smoke. And I told him, man, that would be cool for MVP to do that. And Dream goes, yeah, you know what? That really would. That'd be something pretty damn cool. He said, let me get to work on that. So the inflatable tunnel is because of a conversation I had with Dusty Rhodes, and he was the one that made that happen.
I'm so glad you brought up Dusty, and I'm so glad that that's a story, because I was just this week kind of mind blown thinking about the impact that man continues to have on the world of wrestling. When I'm sitting there going, at the same time, you've got an NWA pay-per-view called Hard Times, and we all know why that pay-per-view is called Hard Times. You've got Cody and Dustin, living the legacy of their father in AEW, and that being referenced all the time. And then on NXT, you've got the Dusty Tag Team Classic happening. All simultaneously, the one link that brings these three theoretically competing promotions together is that they are all heavily influenced by that man, Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, his impact on the business in general will reverberate for generations to come, man.
Yeah.
I mean, talk them into the building. That's who did it better than he did, and that's still what we do today, right? Ultimately.
Yeah. Did you get a chance at all to talk to Matt Hardy while you were there at the Royal Rumble or at Raw? The only reason I bring it up is because I was thinking about your career, and I would say that your program, I guess is the word, with Matt Hardy, of course, like the saga of you guys trying to one-up each other at every conceivable event, was one of the most memorable MVP storylines. And I find it pretty ironic that in 2020, you could have conceivably shared a locker room again.
I think almost inarguably that it's the most memorable run, especially during that time on SmackDown, when SmackDown was depleted with so many major injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool as hell that Vince, had an open door policy and told me and Matt, hey, you guys got ideas, bring them in here. So a lot of the stuff that we did that whole angle was our idea. Actually, to be fair, Matt and Kennedy had talked about doing something similar. It was an idea that they had. Ken was out hurt. Matt asked me what I thought about it. I thought it was great. He asked Ken if he would be cool to pitch it for us. Of course, Ken was cool with it, and we brought it to Vince. Vince loved it, and voila, history was made. So to answer your question, I did not get a chance to speak with Matt, but it's kind of crazy. It all comes together now, right? Because you asked me, you mentioned the Hall of Fame. It's weird that I'm at that point in my career where I know it's coming to an end very soon, and now people are talking about the Hall of Fame, and it's like, what constitutes a Hall of Fame career? What are the stats?
Yeah.
I mean, I always said, man, my picture's on the wall in Rivera Steakhouse. I'm in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you going in is a question of when, not if. I don't think you could argue that you would be going into the Hall of Fame. I think, MVP. At the end of the day, it's the pro wrestling, the WWE Hall of Fame is a Hall of Fame for pro wrestling. And in pro wrestling, I don't think statistics matter. I think memories matter. And if people remember you enough that after over 9 years, after 10 years, the WWE wanted to bring you back for 2 nights to kind of celebrate that. So clearly, if there's that level of memory for what you did in WWE, I would say you're a shoo-in for Hall of Fame. Do you have any thoughts on who you would want to put you in?
That's why I was saying how funny it is. Like, there are so many people that touched my career and who had an effect on me. I've never thought about my Hall of Fame induction because it was something that I was like, Hall of Fame, let's see what happens. I don't know about Hall of Fame, but if it is something that happens, of course I'd be honored, and it would thrill me to be able to bring my son on stage to accept with me and for him to be a part of that whole experience. Maybe it's a bit premature to have this conversation, but I'm pretty sure Matt Hardy would definitely be one of the first people I would probably turn to for my induction, because as you said, it was probably my most memorable feud for WWE. I was so fortunate to have, had my first angle with Kane and the Inferno match, and that led to me having countless matches with the Brothers of Destruction, me and Kennedy facing them, main eventing all over the world on SmackDown. Just, an unbelievable journey. Dude, there's been so many people along the way that have left a thumbprint. I had the pleasure of talking to Norman Smiley,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people think Norman Smiley trained me. He didn't train me; he polished me. By the time he started coming around and working with me, I had my ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but I was telling Norman, he was the one that introduced me to Japanese wrestling.
Hmm.
He was the one that lit that fire. When I went to Benoit and asked him, for some advice, it was Norman that said, yeah, feel free to go ahead and drop my name to Benoit. And, Benoit ended up becoming friends, and he became a mentor. And, a huge impact on my success was due to the mentoring that Chris Benoit gave me. But that door was opened up because of the respect that Benoit had for Norman Smiley. His fingerprints are all over my career in so many different ways. We were laughing about it. So it's really cool, just thinking about that. He's somebody that most people don't realize, but he had a huge impact on my career. There are just so many different people. But I guess, Matt Hardy would definitely be probably one of the top candidates for that.
You said that you can tell your career is winding down, and we were talking a little bit about you and that who knows, maybe in the future a backstage role at WWE. Is there anything specific that's left in your career that you want to do? You've said that was your last WWE match. So, as much as you've done, it seems like every goal that you've had, at least that I know of that you've had in wrestling, it seems like you've been able to accomplish. What do you want to do in the ring before you officially overall say, that's it, the boots are hung up?
Dude, I can tell you with a level of pride and contentedness that I've done virtually everything I wanted to do. WWE was a goal. New Japan was a dream. I've wrestled in WrestleManias, plural. I've wrestled in Wrestle Kingdoms. I've wrestled for just about all of the big companies that exist. I've wrestled with and against most of my heroes. I've won prestigious titles. I'm in the history books, just being the first ever IWGP Intercontinental Champion. That's one of my proudest accomplishments in pro wrestling. Knowing that I held the title that Nikita Koloff and Magna TA feuded over.
Mm-hmm.
That United States Championship, yeah, I held that twice. Man, I'm very proud to say I've done just about everything. So I can't think of anything left. Korakuen Hall, Ryogoku, Tokyo Dome, Madison Square Garden with Ric Flair. There's really not much left to do. And that's why at this stage of my career, I am so comfortable with letting it go. Like, this was my last WWE match. And, I've got a bunch of bookings already on the calendar for 2020, but, this could be my last year, man.
Right.
This could be it.
Right.
The cool thing is I'm okay with it. I'm not, some guys just, I can understand what it would be like. It would be like, breaking up with a love affair that you've had for, a couple of decades. But I'm okay. I realize, like, it's time. This is that point where, you have to start creating distance. Pro wrestling is a young man's game. And there are those phenoms that have, look at Jericho. He's still putting on amazing fucking matches. And, he's geriatric. So, there are exceptions to the rule. But, Clint Eastwood famously said, a man's got to know his limitations. And, I want everybody to remember me as still being pretty good. I want, when I walk away and I hang the boots up, I want people to go, yeah, but MVP, you can still go. Exactly. That's
Right.
why I'm leaving.
Right. What's it like in 2020 to be in a ring with Brock Lesnar? What does that feel like to be in a ring with current day Brock Lesnar?
That was pretty cool, man. I had only met Brock once or twice before in passing,
Mm-hmm.
so actually be able to share a ring with him and have a little bit of physical interaction, as brief as it may have been, on that stage for that moment, it was cool. And if you think about it, if you understand how things work, all right, the whole idea was, okay, Brock's the monster, and then here comes Drew. So let's build Brock to build Drew, which is how the business works.
Right.
Nobody gets over without help. It's a concerted effort. So, for me to be on the Rumble, a surprise entry, and to be a part of that, man, that was an honor. So that was really cool. I would love to actually get a chance to roll around with Brock sometime. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you'd have your work cut out for you, though.
Ah, man, I never run from a challenge. I'm up for it.
I love that.
I'd like.
What do you? Go ahead.
No, I said I'd like that.
Yeah.
I Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitively. I do tournaments. I enjoy stepping on the mat with high-level black belts and getting my ass handed to me, because then you learn. So dealing with a physical phenom like Brock Lesnar, that would be pretty cool to find out just what my limitations are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you thought at all, hypothetically in the future, should you end up in some kind of a backstage role in WWE? Have you thought about what ways, especially after the weekend and seeing how things work and who's there now and what the overall kind of vibe and attitude and mentality is? Have you thought about how you would want to contribute to that culture?
I mean, WWE usually is good about um, using people's strengths to the overall benefit of the company. So I think for sure my strength, one of my most notable strengths in the business of pro wrestling, is my ability to cut a promo, as they say. So I would love to, be able to work with some young guys on increasing their promo abilities, working on those little things, comfort. Um, I really, the first time I was in WWE, Vince actually told me to be more hands-on and producing my segments and my vignettes to get more involved.
Wow.
When I was at TNA, I produced lots of It was really cool that they would just say, okay, here, we need you to get this done. MVP, can you handle this? Like, yeah, I got it. So I got, a lot of experience as an unofficial working agent there. And so that would be something that would be pretty cool, maybe producing some segments, or, just being a standard agent, working with the young guys on their matches and ideas and, psychology and things of that sort. I think that's where initially I would probably best be used.
Did you have that Kill Monger outfit ready to go, or is that something that you find out like, oh, they are going to use me in the Rumble, let me get something special made?
No, dude, I've had that sitting in the closet for quite some time.
That's awesome.
I've been waiting. Like, well, I need a big show, a big stage to debut this on. And I've had some pretty decent shows here and there, but I was like, I just need that one really good stage, and what better stage than the Royal. So yes, it was sitting. Shout out to Main Event Gear.
So you just had that idea in your head, like you watch Black Panther, obviously you love it, and you go, that would make some pretty cool gear, and you just go out, you just reach out to the gear company and go, can you make this for me? And without an idea of where you're going to use it, just because at some point that's going to be cool to have.
Or as Iron Sheik would say, exactly,
Bubba. That's awesome.
And I thought, my MVP long sleeve gear, how awesome would it be? And I just, here's a picture, make this in the MVP gear. And my man was able to knock it out. Again, Main Event Gear. For you young guys that are listening to this that want gear made, they are the only people that have made my gear for the last decade. And I can't say enough good about the quality of their work and the timeliness of their work. They're not cheap, but invest in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, when you can independently go out and get somebody to make you something that's going to look really cool on a giant pay-per-view that's your first time back in 10 years, I would say it's probably worth the cost, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Or if you're just a young indie guy and you're trying to make a name for yourself, and you're making the towns and you're doing the shows, invest in your gear. I've
Yes.
always said, look like a pro. When your gear is excuse me, when your gear is threadbare and you've got tape on your boots, like, come on, man, invest in yourself. If you want somebody else to invest in you, then you got to invest in yourself. And you want to represent yourself well. Always, spend money on your boots and your gear. Look like a professional.
Yeah, it's always amazing when people don't. I mean, you would think, growing up, when you watch wrestling as a fan, you always remember people's gear. You always remember the way people look. You always remember that presentation. And sometimes it really shocks me that investment isn't made. Or you see the guys who have, like, their boots taped up or whatever it is, especially because on the independents, I feel like you have this ability, even if people don't know who you are, if you come out looking like you're a superstar or looking like you're somebody or looking like you've invested heavily in what you're wearing, people generally will assume that you're a big deal and they just don't know about you. And I think that's probably your best case scenario, right?
You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Right.
And, like you said, I remember years ago when I was on the indie scene, just coming up, I was on a show where I was tagging with Buff Bagwell, who, WCW had just ended. And, I'm young and I got on some really fresh color coordinated gear. And back then I used to come with these pull away pants and jacket on top of my gear. And, I'm tagging with Buff Bagwell. And, some people were saying, I don't remember you from WCW. Hey, did I see you on WCW? I don't know. All these people thought that I was on WCW, but they just didn't know me, or maybe you got signed towards the end. No, I've never been to WCW. But, one of my friends and mentors, Dave Johnson, he was there. He passed away recently. He said, dude, through the eyes of a child, you look just like him. He doesn't know the difference, and as you can see, a lot of adults didn't know. So I looked like a professional. I looked like a pro. And I firmly believe that if you want to be perceived as you said, a big deal, then present yourself as such.
Right. Absolutely. And honestly, that goes for all walks of life. That's not even just a wrestling thing. That's just a life thing. Go out of the house looking like you're somebody. The people who walk down the street or do a job interview or wherever you're going,
the old fake it till you make it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, MVP, I appreciate you giving so graciously of your time. I want to say congratulations on this incredible Sunday into Monday that you had, and congratulations on not only refreshing everybody's memory on how impactful your run was with WWE, but for looking like a superhero now in front of your kid. I mean, I have to imagine that if your match at Reality of Wrestling was enough for you to get put over almost all of the Avengers, you holding your own against Rey Mysterio and entering the Royal Rumble over the course of 2 nights, if anything is going to allow you to get put over the Hulk, I feel like this is the one, right?
You would like to think, man. So I don't know. I haven't asked him yet. Right now, I can't get over Rey Mysterio. So that's
that's true. Do you think?
I even told Ray, I said, this sucks because as long as I've been trying to get him to book me over you, now this is just going to confirm his predisposition to booking you over me. So, such as that. But, yeah, man, thanks a lot, Sam. It's a pleasure. Man, it's kind of funny. As I began this journey with WWE so many years ago, you were an awkward intern.
Yeah. For those
questions.
for those that don't know, the first time I met MVP, you came in, you did your entire interview. It was on Opie and Anthony. You did your entire interview standing, and it was like 45 minutes long, and you held the entire room. But most importantly, me as like an intern or whatever I was at that point, I was forced to ask you embarrassing questions. I had to look at you in the eye and ask you the question, which do you prefer, WWE or jail? And and that somehow to this day we're still speaking. I don't know. That's on you. That's not on me, but I guess that means you're a good guy.
Oh man, I remember that too, and I remember looking around like, is this dude serious? You guys sound cool here, but it was an experience. And as you said, all these years later, here we are.
Yeah, man.
And it's been really cool. And I'm so happy to see your success. And you know, you and Sam, you and fucking Norton. Goddamn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. And I appreciate, once again, I appreciate you giving me your time. Congratulations on everything, man.
Hey, on Twitter, at the 305 MVP,
Yes.
Instagram, at 305 MVP, and my own podcast, the VIP Lounge, which I stopped doing some time ago, will be returning very soon.
Love it.
So go to the 305mvp.com for more information. Check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. And it was awesome as always, Sam. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, man.